everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. I have a love-hate relationship with textbooks. I really do not use them in our homeschool because I think they're dreadfully boring and I don't think that they're written in a way to engage the learner. But I think that there are a lot of textbooks who cover a lot of fascinating topics, and I really like that they cover them in a certain order that really seems to make sense. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is using a textbook table of contents to tailor your own curriculum. Because I think a lot of us always look at textbook learning in one way. Read the assigned pages, answer the questions, take a test. Read the assigned pages, answer the questions, take a test. And no wonder we find it boring, or at least I find it boring, because it's so monotonous, and again, the writing just isn't interesting at all. So what I want to tell you is you need to take a look at that table of contents. The table of contents is worth so much more than we give it credit for. Most of us, when we see the table of contents, we kind of just use it to help us plan out our day of what pages are going to be covered when, how long we have to cover a certain chapter, and so on. But a table of contents really can provide an entire framework for a curriculum that you can choose what books will be used, how it will be covered, and what sorts of activities your kids will do. And I'm going to explain a little bit to you about how we do that today. So right here is a biology book that my oldest daughter used a couple years ago. She found it really boring, but I really do like the topics that are addressed in it. So what I've decided to do with my two remaining high schoolers who will also be doing biology is I'm going to be structuring my own lesson plan around just the table of contents. So in order to do that, the first thing you want to do is take a look at all of the topics that are listed. For example, in chapter 1 here, there are the flowering seed plants, the structure and function of leaves, flowers, fruits and seeds, stems and roots, and so on. What you want to do is take a look at that table of contents and list everything that is going to be addressed in the book. Now remember, you do not have to use this part of the book at all. Stick to this one, and I'm going to tell you how to do that. So now you have a bunch of good topics that you really want to make sure that you cover. They're listed in order, which is very helpful. But what you can do is use them in a way that is actually going to fit your homeschool. Because remember that textbooks generally are designed to teach a multitude of children. But you're not teaching a multitude of children. You're teaching just your children. And that's one of the great things about homeschooling is that you can teach things in a way that fits each individual child and also fits you, because you also have to factor that into it. How do you like to teach? So after you list out all of the topics that are going to be covered, there are some options that you can do in order to continue on with your own tailored curriculum. The first one is to take this list of topics and go to the library and find trade books on this. And you have to admit that if you find some trade books, for example, on the types of leaves, they're bound to be way more interesting than the ones that are in the textbook. Because again, the textbooks, they serve a purpose, but they're not written in a way that they're actually concerned with keeping kids interested. And I'm going to be honest when I say that's just not what they're concerned with. Trade books are a great way to get your kids really engaged in learning because there's colorful pictures. They're usually written by one author who has a really great passion for the subject, and they're not written for the sole purpose of educating. They're written because the author really has a deep interest in the subject. So that's the first tip, is instead of using this textbook, go on out to the library and get a bunch of trade books on all of the subjects that will be covered. A second option that you can have is to look at these topics and think of some hands-on activities that your child can do. For example, if they will be learning about seeds, they could possibly plant a garden with you. Or I've already done a little activity where we used a wet paper towel around a bean seed, and once it got soft enough and sprouted a little bit, we actually opened it up and looked at the inside of the seed. Thanks to Pinterest, there are so many ways that you can incorporate hands-on learning into your homeschool. So really be creative. Look at those topics and think to yourself, what are some hands-on ways that I can teach my kids these subjects so that they're not just sitting and reading a book all the time? Another option that you have is notebooking. As your child is going through those trade books or as they're doing their activities, have them notebook through them. And notebooking is great for children who really don't like to write because it gives your kids ownership of what they're going to write about. There are so many different ways to approach notebooking. You know, a lot of people think that notebooking is just basically writing a review of what they read, and it's so much more than that. You know, your child can create their own brochures about the subject, little postcards. They could draw pictures with illustrations. They could make mini books. They could do creative writing that factors in the topics. There are so many ways. So notebooking is really something to think about, and it's really inexpensive. Other than the printing, it's really inexpensive. And you don't have to do the pre-printed notebooking worksheet. So if you just want to keep that in mind. Another idea is field trips. What sorts of field trips can you incorporate into these items on your list? Again, if your child is learning about seeds, and I just keep going back to that because that's what I happen to look at in this book here. But if they're learning about seeds, consider visiting a nursery or perhaps a farm around you. Again, just think to yourself, what are some really fun and preferably inexpensive field trips that I can do with my child? Because remember, it's okay to splurge and do an expensive field trip here and there. But if you find inexpensive or preferably free field trips to do, you can really incorporate a lot more of them into your homeschool. And it's a great way for your kids to make connections is by actually going places and seeing how things work. Another idea is, I actually forgot about, movies, documentaries. Take advantage of Netflix, or not even just Netflix. There's Amazon Prime, there's YouTube. There are so many great videos and documentaries and movies out there that might be a great fit for your subject. And I'm not one who thinks that you should have your child watch a video every single day in your homeschool, but it can be a really fun way every now and then to incorporate what they're learning. Let them see something visually on the TV, sit and pop some popcorn and just relax a bit. And another thing that you can do is actually just combine all of these separate choices. If it would actually almost be like your own unit study. You have the hands-on activities going on, and you've got the notebooking, and you've got the field trips, and you've got the videos, and really just combine all of it because it's so much fun when you actually have variety in your school. When you know that your child is going to be excited because you're not doing the same thing every single day. So, and one more thing that I want to point out is that you do not have to own the textbook that you use a table of contents for. I do know that you can go online a lot of times and you will get previews of table of contents of curriculum. So you can actually check them out online and actually use it without even buying a curriculum. So I hope that this has given you some ideas today on how to use those textbooks that might be collecting dust on your shelves, because they really can be used for a great homeschool inspiration and planning. I hope you have a great day.